The great chamber was quiet. 12 alien leaders sat in their tall chairs made of crystal and gold. Their eyes watched the small human woman who stood alone at the center of the room. She looked so tiny compared to them, so weak, so easy to ignore. Ambassador Una Park held her papers close to her chest. She had practiced her speech for months. She had memorized every word, every pause, every gesture. 300 years of service. 300 years of loyalty. Surely that meant something. The vote is complete, announced High Arbiter Velos. He was a Mirathi, tall and thin with skin like gray stone. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. The council has reached its decision. Una felt her heart beating fast. She looked at each face around her. The Velith with their 4 eyes. The Thesan with their metal bodies. The Korathi with their soft purple skin. She had worked with all of them. She had saved their people. She had bled for their causes. Humanity's request for a permanent seat on the Galactic Council is denied, Velos said. The vote was unanimous. The word hit her like a cold wind. Unanimous. Not even one voice had spoken for them. May I ask why? Una kept her voice steady. She would not cry. She would not beg. Velos looked at her the way someone might look at a small animal. There was no hatred in his eyes. That would have been better. Instead, there was something worse. There was nothing at all. Humanity has been useful, he said slowly. Your species has served the council well. Your doctors have healed our sick. Your engineers have built our stations. Your soldiers have fought our wars. But usefulness is not the same as equality. We have given everything, Una said, and we are grateful. Velos waved his long hand. You may continue to serve. The council values its tools. Tools. The word hung in the air like poison, high above the chamber. In the observation deck, Fleet Admiral Tay Kang watched through the glass. His uniform was crisp and clean. His face showed nothing. But his hands were closed into tight fists at his sides. They called us tools, whispered Hannah Lim. She stood next to him, her datapad forgotten in her hands. She was the director of human affairs, responsible for every human living in council space. 47 million people. All of them tools, I heard, Tay said quietly. What do we do now? Tay did not answer. He watched Una gather her papers below. He watched her bow once to the council. It was an old Korean custom, a sign of respect. The aliens did not understand it. They had never tried to understand anything about humans. Ambassador Park, Velos called out as Una walked toward the door. We have not dismissed you. There are other matters to discuss. The Nebula Strait requires new navigators. The Thesan prime reactors need maintenance. Your people will be assigned. Una stopped at the door. She turned around slowly, and then she did something that no human had ever done in 300 years of service. She smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally understood something important. Something that changed everything you just did, she said. Excuse me. You asked where I am going? You said you haven't dismissed me. Una's voice was calm and clear. But you just did. 12 votes, unanimous. You told us exactly what we are to you. And now we understand. Ambassador Park, you forget your place. No. Una shook her head. For 300 years we forgot our place. We thought if we worked hard enough, if we sacrificed enough, if we proved ourselves enough, you would see us as equals. But you never will. You can't, because that would mean admitting you were wrong about us from the beginning. The chamber was completely silent. None of the 12 leaders moved. None of them spoke. So we're leaving, Una said simply. All of us. Every human in council space. Velos laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. Leaving? And go where? The boundary? That region is unexplored. Dangerous. Your species would not survive a year. Maybe, Una said. But that's our choice now. Not yours. You need us, Velos said. His voice had an edge now. Your technology came from us. Your ships were built with our designs. Without the council, humanity is nothing. Una looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at each of the 12 leaders, one by one. She memorized their faces. She wanted to remember this moment forever. "We will see," she said. She turned and walked through the door. It closed behind her with a soft sound. No shouting. No crying. No threats or promises of revenge, just silence. In the observation deck, Tai Kong finally moved. He touched his communication device and spoke one word. Begin. Cross council space. 47 million humans received the same message. It was short and simple. It said, "Come home." On Mirathi Station 7, a cargo pilot named Dacian read the message and began packing his things. On Thesan Prime, engineers shut down the reactors they had built and maintained for decades. On Karathi medical stations, doctors saved their research to private drives and said goodbye to their patients. No one argued. No one hesitated. No one asked questions. They had all been waiting for this moment. They had all known deep down that this day would come. The council had taught them an important lesson over 300 years. They had taught them that kindness without respect is just another form of control. That service without recognition is just another name for slavery and humans. More than any species in the galaxy understood what it meant to refuse slavery. Back in the council chamber, the 12 leaders sat in confused silence. They looked at each other with questions in their eyes. What had just happened? What did it mean? "They'll come back," one of them said finally. "They have nowhere else to go." "Let them run," another agreed. "They'll learn. They'll beg for our help within a year." "High Arbiter," Velos said nothing. He stared at the door where Yuna had disappeared. Something cold moved through his chest. Something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. He did not understand why. The humans were small. They were weak. They were tools, nothing more. But tools did not smile like that. Tools did not walk away with such quiet certainty. Tools did not look at you like they knew a secret you would never understand. Velos pushed the feeling away. He was being foolish. Humanity would crawl back within months. It's broken and desperate. He was sure of it. He was completely, absolutely sure of it. And that was his first mistake. 6 months passed. The council watched and waited. They expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected humans to fight among themselves, to argue about leaving, to realize their mistake and come crawling back. None of that happened. Instead, the humans left quietly. One by one. Family by family. Ship by ship. They packed their belongings, said their goodbyes, and flew toward the boundary. There were no protests. There were no tears. There was only a calm, steady movement. Like water flowing downhill. Daishin was one of the last to leave Mirathi Station. 7. He had lived there for 20 years. He had learned the Mirathi language. He had celebrated their holidays. He had called this place home. His employer, a Mirathi merchant named Torvik, watched him load boxes onto his small cargo ship. "This is madness," Torvik said. "You will die out there. The boundary is empty. No stations. No supplies. No protection." Day continued loading his ship. He did not stop. He did not look up. "Your council made its choice," Day said. "Now we make ours. But I have been good to you." Torvik spread his gray hands. "I paid you fairly. I treated you with respect. Why are you leaving me?" Dave finally stopped. He looked at the Mirathi who had employed him for 2 decades. He thought about all the cargo runs, all the late nights, all the times he had gone beyond his duties to help. "Paid me fairly," Day agreed. "You treated me with respect. But when the council called us tools, you said nothing. When they rejected us, you did not speak. Your silence told me everything I needed to know. I am just a merchant. I have no power in the council. Neither do I." Day climbed into his ship, but I still made a choice. And now I live with it. He closed the door and started the engines. Within minutes, his ship was just a small light in the darkness. Flying toward the unknown. All across council space, the same story repeated itself. Human workers disappeared from factories. Human doctors left hospitals empty. Human soldiers put down their weapons and walked away from posts they had guarded for generations. The aliens watched with confusion and anger. How dare they leave? How dare they reject everything the Council had given them? Did they not understand how lucky they were to serve the greatest civilization in the galaxy? But the humans did not argue. They did not explain. They simply left. Admiral Taekong coordinated the exodus from the Bridge of the Silent Dawn. It was humanity's last warship in Council territory, and it moved slowly through space. Waiting for every human to board before crossing the boundary, Captain Sora, you stood beside him, reading reports on her datapad. Final count, she said. 47,200,000 humans extracted. Every colony, every station, every outpost, casualties. Tay asked, "Now, sir, no fights, no incidents." Everyone came peacefully. Tay nodded slowly. He had worried about this. Some humans had built lives in Council space. They had alien friends, alien lovers, alien families. He had expected resistance. He had expected some to refuse the call. But every single one had come. Every single one had chosen humanity over comfort. What about the Council response? He asked. Sora almost smiled. They're laughing at us, sir. Their news channels call it the Great Human Tantrum. They're making jokes about us dying in the boundary. They think we're committing suicide. Tay turned to look out the window at the stars. Let them laugh. Let them think we're fools. It will make what comes next even sweeter, sir. Sora looked at him with curiosity. What does come next? The boundary really is unexplored. We don't know what's out there. Tay was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a low voice meant only for her. Do you know the one thing the Council never understood about humans? What's that, sir? They think we succeeded because of them. They think our technology, our medicine, our engineering, all came from their guidance. They never realized the truth. Tay's eyes were hard and bright. We figured out all of it on our own. We just let them take credit because it made working with them easier. Sora stared at him. Are you saying... I'm saying that everything humans built in Council space was only a fraction of what we can really do? We held back. We stayed quiet. We let them believe they were teaching children. Tay smiled, and it was the same smile Yuna had worn in the Council chamber. They have no idea what humans build when no one is watching. The Silent Dawn crossed the boundary at midnight. Council Standard Time, behind it. The last human ship entered the unknown darkness, for the first time in 300 years. Council space had no humans, the aliens celebrated. They threw parties and made speeches about how they had finally gotten rid of the annoying primitives. They talked about how much better life would be without humans always asking for more, always pushing for equality, always forgetting their place. But within weeks, small problems began to appear. A water recycler on Marathi Station 7 broke down. The repair manual was written in Korean. No one could read it. A navigation computer on a Velith trade ship gave an error. The human programmer who had written its code was gone. No one knew how to fix it. A Karathi child got sick with a rare disease. The human doctor who specialized in treating it had left 3 weeks ago. The other doctors did not know what to do. Small problems. Tiny problems. The kind of problems that humans had solved every day without anyone noticing. But now there were no humans to solve them. The Council did not worry. These were minor issues. Their own people would learn. Their own scientists would adapt. They did not need humans. They had never really needed humans. That's what they told themselves. That's what they believed. But deep in the boundary, beyond the edge of Council space, something was happening. Ships were gathering. Stations were being built. Plans were being made. The humans were not dying. They were preparing, and when they were ready, the Council would finally understand the true cost of silence. They would understand what it meant to dismiss 47 million people who had spent 300 years learning everything about how their civilization worked. Every weakness, every flaw, every crack in the foundation, the humans knew it all, and now they were free to use that knowledge however they wanted. The countdown had begun. The council just didn't know it yet. 2 years after the humans left, the plague came to Mirathai Prime. It started in a small city on the southern continent. A few people got sick. Their skin turned dark. Their breathing became difficult. Within days, they were dead. The doctors were not worried at first. Plagues happen sometimes. They always knew what to do. The humans had taught them, but when they looked for the treatment records, they found nothing. The human medical teams had taken everything when they left. Every cure, every research file, every piece of knowledge they had created over 3 centuries. This is theft, High Arbiter, Velos shouted in the emergency council meeting. They stole our medical technology, actually, his advisor said quietly. They took their medical technology. They developed these treatments. We just use them, then recreate them. Our scientists are not fools. The advisor looked at the floor. Sir, our scientists have been trying for 2 years. They cannot understand the human research methods. The notes are written in human languages. The equipment was designed by human hands. Everything about their work is alien to us. The plague spread. It jumped from city to city, from continent to continent. Within 6 months, 10 million Mirathi were dead. The hospitals overflowed. The funeral fires burned day and night and far away. Beyond the boundary, humanity watched. Director Hannah Lim stood on the observation deck of New Seoul Station. It was a massive structure built in just 18 months using techniques the council had never seen. Below her, construction drones assembled the frame of their 3rd orbital city. Children played in parks filled with trees that glowed softly in the artificial light. Her assistant approached with a data pad. Director, we have received another communication from the council. What do they want? Medical assistance. The Karathi plague has killed 15 million now. They are begging for help. Hannah did not turn around. She watched a little girl chase a ball across the grass, laughing as her mother ran after her. Tell them we're busy, she said. Director. The assistant hesitated. 15 million people. Yes, Hannah's voice was heavy. 15 million people who stood by and cheered when the council called us primitives. 15 million people who laughed when we left. 15 million people who never once, in 300 years, spoke up for us. She finally turned to face her assistant. Her eyes were sad, but steady. I don't enjoy this, she said. None of us do. But we cannot help them. If we do, they will learn nothing. They will take our aid, rebuild their power, and go back to treating other species the same way they treated us. So we just let them die? We let them face the consequences of their choices, just as we faced ours. The assistant left. Hannah turned back to the viewport. In the distance, she could see the lights of humanity's new civilization spreading across the darkness. They had built so much in 2 years, without the council's restrictions, without their rules and limits, and constant supervision, free to think, free to create, free to become what they were always meant to be. But the victory felt hollow. Somewhere out there, people were dying. And even though those people had hurt humanity for generations, their suffering brought no joy. That was the difference, Hannah thought. That was what the council never understood. Humans did not want revenge. They just wanted to be left alone. On the industrial world of Thesan Prime, things were even worse. The great fusion reactors had powered the planet for 80 years. They provided energy for billions of beings. They were the heart of council industrial production, and now they were failing, Chief. Engineer Korak stood in the control room staring at screens full of error messages he did not understand. The human engineer, Jin Beek, had designed these reactors. He had made modifications that improved their efficiency by 300%. He had written manuals explaining how to maintain them, but the manuals were in Korean. And Jin Beek was gone. We have tried translating the documents, Korak's assistant reported, but the technical terms do not match anything in our databases. The humans use their own vocabulary, their own measurements, their own way of thinking. Then figure it out, Korak snapped. We are Thesan. We are the greatest engineers in the galaxy. Humans were better. Korak spun around. What did you say? The assistant stepped back, but his voice remained steady. I worked beside Jinbeek for 30 years. I watched him solve problems in minutes that would take our teams months. I saw him design systems that should have been impossible. The humans were better than us, sir. We just never admitted it. Korax wanted to argue. He wanted to scream that this was impossible, that the primitive humans could never surpass Theiss in engineering, but he couldn't, because deep down he knew it was true. The reactors failed 3 weeks later. Theiss Prime went dark. Factories stopped. Cities froze. Billions of beings huddled in the cold, waiting for power that never came. Across council space, similar disasters unfolded. Trade routes collapsed. Without human navigators, ships got lost in the nebula straits. 40 cargo vessels disappeared in a single month. Supplies stopped flowing. Worlds began to starve. Communication networks crashed. Human programmers had built the software that connected 1,000 worlds. Now that software was breaking down, and no one could repair it. Defense systems malfunctioned. Human soldiers had maintained the weapons platforms that protected Council territory. Now those platforms fired randomly or not at all, the Council was falling apart, and still, humanity stayed silent. They did not gloat. They did not send messages mocking the Council's failures. They did not threaten, or demand, or negotiate. They simply built their new civilization, piece by piece, day by day. New cities rose. New ships launched. New technologies emerged that made everything the Council had created look like toys. Ambassador Una Park now served as the leader of New Sol Station. She spent her days meeting with engineers, scientists, teachers, and artists. She helped plan schools and hospitals and parks. Sometimes, late at night, she would stand alone on the observation deck and look out at the stars. She would think about Velos and the Council. She would think about all those years of hoping and working and believing that things could change. She had been foolish then. She understood that now. Some people could not change. Some cultures were too proud, too certain of their own superiority, to ever see the truth. The Council was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to save them, not because humanity was cruel, but because the Council had spent 300 years refusing to learn. Now their time for learning was running out. 5 years after the Exodus, the Council finally surrendered its pride. Ambassador Thessic of the Velith Consortium stood on the bridge of his ship. Watching the boundary approach, he had never been this far from Council space. No, Velith had. The boundary was forbidden territory. It's dangerous and unknown. But desperate times required desperate measures. His ship was small. His crew was minimal. He had stripped away all weapons before leaving, a gesture of peace that his ancestors would have found shameful. The Velith were conquerors. They did not come to others with empty hands and bowed heads, but the Velith were also dying. Their trade empire had collapsed. Their worlds were starving. Their people were rioting in the streets, demanding answers that their leaders could not give. Thessic carried gifts in his cargo hold. Rare minerals from a dozen worlds. Star charts showing unexplored territories. Promises of recognition and respect and everything humans had asked for. 5 years ago, he hoped it would be enough. It was not. The human ship that met him at the boundary was enormous. 3 times the size of anything the Council had ever built. With smooth lines and elegant design that made Velith engineering look primitive. This is the unyielding dawn. A voice crackled over his communication system. State your purpose.
I am
Ambassador Thessic of the Velith Consortium. I come to negotiate with the human leadership. There was a long pause. Then, follow us. Thessic had expected to meet with minor officials. Instead, he was brought to the flagship's main conference room and faced with Admiral Taekong himself. The human looked different from what Thessic remembered. Older, yes, with gray hair at his temples, but there was something else. A confidence. A certainty. The look of a man who knew exactly where he stood in the universe. Admiral Kong, Thessic said, bowing slightly. Thank you for receiving me, Ambassador. Tay did not bow. He did not smile. He simply sat at the head of the table and gestured for Thesic to take a seat. You've come a long way. I assume this is important. The council wishes to negotiate your return. Tay's expression did not change. Return to what? To partnership. Thesic leaned forward eagerly. The council has reconsidered its position. We now offer humanity everything you asked for. A permanent seat. Full voting rights. Recognition as equals. 5 years ago, that would have meant everything to us. And now? Tay was silent for a moment. He looked at Thesic, the way a teacher might look at a student who had failed a simple test. Now we have built our own civilization, our own stations, our own ships, our own future. He spread his hands. What exactly would we gain by returning? Thesic felt his throat tighten. He had prepared for many possible responses, but not this one. Not complete indifference. The council has resources, he tried. Trade networks. Established infrastructure. Surely cooperation would benefit both sides, perhaps. Tay nodded slowly. We are not opposed to cooperation, but not as members of your council. Not as servants seeking approval. We have no interest in your politics or your power struggles. And what do you want? Tay slid a datapad across the table. We are willing to discuss trade agreements, medical technology, engineering support. At fair market rates. Thesic picked up the datapad and read the terms. His 4 eyes widened with each line. The prices were astronomical, not in credits or resources, but in concessions. Humanity wanted territorial rights to entire star systems. They wanted technology transfers from every council species. They wanted formal apologies broadcast across every world, admitting that the council had been wrong to reject them.
Oh.
This is impossible, Thesic whispered. This is extortion. No. Tay's voice was calm, almost gentle. This is what we were always worth. You simply refuse to pay it. The council will never accept these terms. Then the council will continue to suffer. Tay stood up. I'm sorry, Ambassador. I understand this is not the answer you wanted. But we did not create this situation. You did. Thesic rose as well, his mind racing. Surely there is room for negotiation. Surely we can find middle ground. There was room for negotiation 5 years ago. There was middle ground when Ambassador Park stood in your chamber and asked for basic respect. Tay walked to the door. You had 3 centuries to treat us fairly. You chose not to. That choice has consequences. People are dying, Thesic said quietly. Millions have already died from plague and starvation and cold. Do those lives mean nothing to you? Tay stopped with his hand on the door. For a long moment, he did not move. They mean everything to us, he said finally. Every death weighs on my conscience. Every life lost is a tragedy. He turned to face Thesic. But we cannot fix what you broke. We cannot save you from yourselves. If we come back now, if we accept less than what we deserve, nothing will change. The council will recover, and in 100 years, you'll treat some other species exactly as you treated us. You don't know that. I know history. Tay opened the door. A transport will take you back to the boundary. I suggest you deliver our terms to the council. Perhaps they will surprise us both. Thesic left the unyielding dawn in a daze. His mission had failed. He had come offering gifts and promises, and he was leaving with nothing but a list of demands his government would never accept. But as his ship crossed the boundary back into council space, he thought about Tay's words. The council would never accept humanity's terms. The 12 species were too proud, too stubborn, too convinced of their own superiority. But what if they didn't have to accept? What if individual species made their own deals? The idea was dangerous. Treasonous, even. The council had held together for 10,000 years. Breaking it apart would change everything, but everything was already changing. The council was already dying. Maybe it was time to save what could be saved. Thesic began composing a message. Not to the council. Not to his own government. To the Mirathi. To the Korathi. To every species that was desperate enough to listen, the council had failed them. Perhaps it was time to try something new. Within a year, 3 species had signed independent agreements with humanity. The great alliance that had ruled the galaxy for millennia began to crack, and in the end, it was not human weapons that destroyed the Council. It was a single question. Asked by desperate people on 100 worlds, why are we dying for someone else's pride? 10 years after the humans walked away, the Galactic Council held its final meeting. Only 4 of the original 12 species still sent representatives. The others had already broken away, signing their own treaties with humanity, rebuilding their worlds with human help. The great chamber that had once echoed with the voices of galactic power now felt empty and cold. High, Arbiter Velos sat alone in his crystal throne. The others had stopped coming months ago. There was nothing left to discuss. No decisions to make. No power to wield. He was the last true believer. The last one who still thought the Council could be saved. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, you have a visitor." "I am not receiving visitors." "She says you'll want to see her." The assistant paused. "It's Ambassador Park." Velos felt something move in his chest. Fear. Hope. He could not tell any more. The years had blurred all his emotions into a single gray fog. "Send her in." Una Park walked into the chamber alone. She looked different from the frightened woman who had stood at the podium 10 years ago. Her hair was gray now, but her back was straight and her eyes were clear. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her place in the universe. "Hi, Arbiter," she said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for seeing me, Ambassador Park." Velos did not stand. He was too tired. "You look well." "I am well." She walked to the center of the room and looked around at the empty chairs. "The chamber seems different. It is dying." Velos did not see any point in lying. "Like everything else we've built." "Yes." Una's voice was soft. "I'm sorry for that." Velos stared at her. Are you? Are you truly sorry?" "I am." She met his eyes. "We never wanted this. We never wanted you to suffer. We just wanted to be free, and now you are. Yes, now we are." Silence filled the chamber. Velos thought about all the years that had passed. The plague that had killed 30 million Mirathi before humanity finally sent aid. The famine that had starved whole worlds before human ships brought food. The darkness that had covered Thesan Prime until human engineers rebuilt the reactors. Humanity had helped, eventually. After the Council collapsed, after the independent treaties were signed, after the proud and mighty aliens had humbled themselves enough to ask, but they had waited. They had let the suffering continue until the lesson was learned. "I need to understand," Velos said quietly. "Why didn't you fight us? When we rejected you, when we called you tools, why didn't you strike back? You had soldiers. You had ships. You could have hurt us." Una walked slowly toward him. She climbed the steps to his throne and sat down on the top step, looking up at him like a student with a teacher. "Because fighting would have cost us too much," she said. "We would have lost lives, ships, resources, and even if we won, what would we have gained? The right to rule people who hated us? The power to force others to respect us. Some would say that's exactly what you should have wanted. Out. Some would be wrong." Una smiled softly. "Real respect can't be forced. Real equality can't be taken at gunpoint. We knew that, so we walked away. We built something new, something better, and you let us suffer. We let you face the consequences of your choices." Her smile faded, just as we faced ours. When we crossed the boundary, we had nothing. No support, no safety net, no guarantee we would survive. We took that risk because we believed in ourselves. We didn't believe in you. No, you didn't. Una reached into her pocket and pulled out a small container. "But that's the past now. I came here to talk about the future." She opened the container. Inside was a small plant, green and delicate, with tiny white flowers. "This grows on our new homeworld," she said. "We call it hope. It blooms in the darkest soil, in places where nothing else can survive. It reminds us that life finds a way." She placed the plant on the step beside her. "The Council is finished," she said. "But the species who made up the Council don't have to be. We're offering open treaties now. Fair terms. Real partnership. Not because we need you, but because we believe everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. After everything we did to you. Yes, Eunice stood up. Because holding on to anger would have poisoned us. Because revenge would have made us into the thing we hated. Because humans have always believed that people can change, even when they've given us no reason to believe it. Velos looked at the tiny plant with its white flowers. Something stirred in his chest. Something he thought had died years ago. "You're better than us," he said quietly. "You always were?" "No." Eunice shook her head. "We're not better. We're just different. We grew up on a world where survival meant working together, where the weak helped the strong and the strong protected the weak, where walking away was sometimes braver than fighting." She started toward the door, then stopped and looked back. "The council tried to teach us our place," she said. "They wanted us to learn that we were small and primitive and unimportant. But they taught us something else instead. They taught us what we didn't want to become. They showed us the ugliness of pride and the poison of arrogance. And in the end, that lesson was worth more than anything they could have given us." "What happens now?" Velos asked. "Now you choose." Eunice smiled one last time. "You can sit in this empty chamber and mourn what you've lost. Or you can accept that the universe has changed and change with it. The door is open, High Arbiter. Whether you walk through it is up to you." She left. Velos sat alone in the silence. He looked at the empty thrones, the dark screens, the faded symbols of power that meant nothing anymore. Then he looked at the small plant, with its white flowers. Hope for the first time in 10 years. Velos allowed himself to feel something other than despair. It was small, fragile, like a tiny flower blooming in dark soil. But it was there. He stood up slowly. His old bones ached. His heart was heavy with regret, but he walked down the steps. He picked up the plant, and he carried it out of the chamber, leaving the dead council behind. Outside, the stars were shining. Human ships moved peacefully through space beside alien vessels. New trade routes connected worlds that had once been enemies. The universe had changed. And maybe, just maybe, it was not too late to change with it. The humans had taught the galaxy one final lesson. Sometimes, the greatest victory is not won with weapons or anger. Sometimes it is won simply by walking away and letting silence speak for itself.